Apache woman asked the lonely rancher for a job, and he said, "Only if you'll marry me by sunset." The morning sun had just begun to rise over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The prairie stretched endlessly in every direction, its tall grasses swaying gently in the cool breeze. In the distance, a lone ranch sat on a small hill, the wooden fences weathered by time and the barn standing solid and proud against the sky. The ranch seemed empty and silent, except for the soft clucking of chickens and the occasional lowing of cows. It was the kind of place that few strangers visited, a place that belonged more to the wind and the land than to people. From the east, a figure appeared on the horizon. She walked steadily, her footsteps purposeful and quiet over the uneven ground. Her hair, long and dark, swayed slightly with her movements, catching the morning light. Her eyes, sharp and alert, scanned the land ahead, calculating, careful. She was dressed simply, a plain blouse and skirt worn from travel, but neat and clean. Her moccasins were dusty, and her hands bore the marks of work already done. This was Ahuli, a young Apache woman who had traveled a long way to reach the ranch. Ahuli had left her home several weeks earlier. Life had become hard after the death of her father. Her family had always been close to the land, hunting, gathering, and taking care of the small garden that fed them. But without her father, the responsibilities had fallen heavily on her shoulders. Her mother was older now, weaker than she used to be, and her younger siblings looked to her for protection and guidance. Ahuli knew she needed a way to support her family, and she also needed a place where she could work honestly and earn her keep. She had heard about the McCall Ranch from travelers passing through the area. Elias McCall, the owner, was known as a strong and capable man, a rancher who cared deeply for his land and livestock. But he was also known to be a solitary figure, a man who did not take kindly to strangers. Ahuli approached the ranch cautiously, aware that her arrival might not be welcomed. She walked up the path leading to the main house, her heart steady but her mind alert. As she reached the porch, she saw the rancher for the first time. He was a tall man, with broad shoulders and strong hands that had clearly been hardened by years of labor. His face was weathered by the sun, his eyes sharp and calculating. There was a quiet strength about him, a presence that seemed to fill the open space around the ranch. Elias McCall noticed her immediately. He had been outside checking on the fence and the horses, and when he saw Ahuli approaching, he paused. It was rare for anyone to come to his ranch without an appointment or prior notice, and even rarer for someone to appear on foot, alone and with such confidence. He studied her carefully. She walked with a purpose that suggested determination and independence. Her clothes were simple but clean, her posture straight, her gaze steady. There was something about her that caught his attention, something he could not easily ignore. As she reached the porch, she stopped a few steps away, not too close, but not distant either. She looked at him with quiet respect and spoke, her voice calm and steady. "Sir," she said, "I have traveled far and I seek work."
I can help with your ranch. I am strong and I am willing to learn.
"I only ask that you give me a chance." Elias raised an eyebrow. He had expected requests before, of course, but this was different. There was a seriousness in her tone, a kind of honesty that could not be faked. Yet, he was cautious. Many who came seeking work did so out of desperation, and often could not handle the demands of a ranch. This young woman, however, seemed to carry herself with dignity, even in her humble request. He looked at her for a long moment, then spoke in his deep, steady voice. "You want work, huh?" he said, his eyes narrowing slightly. "I don't turn people away lightly, and I certainly don't hire strangers without knowing what they're made of. But I might make an exception. There is one condition." Ahuli tilted her head slightly, listening carefully, not interrupting. She had learned long ago that understanding the rules first was important, even if they seemed strange. Elias continued, his tone serious but not unkind. "You can have the work you want, but only if you agree to marry me by sunset." Ahuli blinked, her mind momentarily stunned. The words were unexpected, almost unbelievable. She had not traveled all this way to be caught in a situation like this. Her eyes widened slightly, and she took a careful step back, thinking quickly. She had heard of men making strange demands, but marriage by sunset was something entirely new. Elias watched her reaction, noting her hesitation but also the steadiness in her eyes.
I don't ask this lightly, he said.
I've lived alone for many years. The ranch is my life, and I need someone I can trust to be part of it, someone who will respect it and me. I know this is sudden, but my offer is honest. You work for me, yes, but you must also be willing to stand by me, to share the life here. Ahuli considered his words carefully. She could feel the weight of the decision pressing on her shoulders. On one hand, she needed work. Her family needed support. On the other hand, this was not a decision to take lightly. She had always known that marriage was a serious commitment, something that required trust and understanding, not just a quick agreement. She held his gaze, her voice calm but firm. "Sir," she said, "I understand your request, but I need to know that if I stay, I will be treated with respect. I will work hard, but I am not asking to be controlled or taken for granted. I have responsibilities, and I will not forget them." Elias nodded slowly. "I don't expect obedience without reason," he said. "I've spent my life building this ranch. I need someone who will work alongside me, not just follow orders. I want honesty, strength, and loyalty. If you can give me that, and if we both find that we can live together, then the choice is yours. But I must be honest. My offer is serious, and the time is short." Ahuli took a deep breath, feeling a mixture of anxiety and curiosity. She had traveled far, faced many challenges, and learned to rely on her own strength. This was another challenge, yes, but it was also an opportunity. She looked around the ranch, the horses grazing peacefully, the chickens pecking at the ground, the barn standing sturdy against the sky. This place was solid, dependable, and in need of care. She could see herself working here, contributing, and perhaps even finding a sense of belonging. Finally, she spoke again, her voice steady. "I will consider your offer," she said.
I cannot make a promise lightly, but I am willing to work today and prove that I can be trusted.
"If I do, then we can see if this agreement is right for both of us." Elias studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Fair enough," he said. "You can start immediately. There is much to do, and I will show you what is expected. If by sunset we both feel this can work, then we will talk about the rest." Ahuli stepped forward carefully, grateful for the chance but also aware of the weight of responsibility she was taking on. She began helping with the morning chores, learning the rhythm of the ranch, feeding the animals, and mending fences. Elias watched her closely, noting her skill, her determination, and the quiet confidence she brought to her work. As the day went on, Ahuli began to understand the ranch better, the routines, the animals, the land itself. She learned quickly, adapting to the demands of the work while maintaining her own sense of independence. Elias found himself impressed by her knowledge, her strength, and her calm determination. For the first time in years, he felt a spark of hope that someone could not only help him but also share in the life he had built. The sun climbed higher in the sky, casting long shadows across the fields. Ahuli worked tirelessly, her focus unwavering, while Elias observed, occasionally offering guidance or a sharp word of advice. They worked side by side, each learning from the other, each recognizing the value the other brought to the ranch. By midday it was clear that Ahuli was not just strong and capable. She was intelligent, resourceful, and willing to face challenges without complaint. Elias began to see her not as a stranger, but as someone who could become an integral part of the ranch, someone who could stand beside him in the years to come. As the first part of the day drew to a close, the stage was set. The offer had been made. The work had begun. And the question of marriage, while still distant and uncertain, hung in the air like the warm sunlight over the prairie. Both Ahuli and Elias knew that by sunset, a decision would have to be made. But for now they continued their work, learning about each other and discovering the unexpected connection that had begun to form between a lonely rancher and a determined Apache woman. The morning had passed, and the sun was climbing steadily in the sky, turning the prairie golden with its warmth. Ahuli had already proven herself to be hardworking and careful, and Elias had begun to see that there was more to this young Apache woman than he had first imagined. She moved with quiet confidence, her hands strong and steady as she helped with the chores. Yet, even as they worked together, the question of his unusual proposal lingered in the back of both their minds. After finishing the morning feeding, Elias called Ahuli over to the barn. "There is something you should know about working here," he said, his voice calm but serious. "This ranch is not just a job. It is my life. I built it with my own hands, and it requires more than just effort. It requires loyalty, honesty, and trust. I need someone who can stand beside me, not just someone who will follow orders." Ahuli nodded, listening carefully. She understood his words, even if the reasoning behind his proposal had been sudden and strange. "I can work hard, sir," she replied. "I can follow the rules of the ranch and take care of the animals. But I also need respect for my choices. I am willing to learn and help, but I will not give up my own sense of self." Elias studied her carefully, noticing the firmness in her voice and the steadiness in her eyes. He realized that this was not someone who would simply bend under his authority. That both intrigued him and made him cautious. "I don't expect you to be afraid of me," he said. "I don't want someone who will only obey because they feel they must. I want someone who can stand beside me and understand what it takes to survive out here." The rest of the morning passed with hard work. Ahuli repaired a broken fence, cleaned the barn, and helped move hay to the loft. Elias occasionally watched her, offering advice on technique or the best way to handle the animals, but mostly he allowed her to figure things out on her own. Her skill and determination impressed him more with every task. By late morning, Elias decided to test her further. "The horses need to be checked and fed individually," he said. "I want you to help me. It is not difficult, but it requires attention. One mistake could hurt the animal or set us back."
Ahuli nodded and followed him to the stables.
As they moved through the rows of horses, Elias explained the routines and the small details that made a ranch run smoothly. Ahuli listened carefully, asking questions only when necessary. She learned quickly, remembering each instruction and demonstrating care in every action. The horses, sensing her calm confidence, accepted her touch and guidance. Elias began to see her in a new light. He had expected her to be strong in body, but her mind was equally capable. She was patient, observant, and clever in solving small problems. She adjusted the harnesses without hesitation, noticed the subtle signs of illness in the animals, and even suggested a small adjustment to the feeding schedule that would help the horses stay healthier. By midday, a strange tension hung over the ranch. The work was exhausting, yet there was an unspoken connection growing between them. They moved together in a rhythm of tasks, each aware of the other's presence, yet careful not to intrude. Ahuli felt a mixture of respect and curiosity toward Elias. He was strict but fair, demanding but patient. She saw in him a man shaped by the land and by years of solitude, a man who carried both strength and sorrow. Elias, for his part, found himself thinking about her constantly, even when he wasn't speaking. Her strength and determination were clear, but so was her independence. He respected that, even as it frustrated him. He was used to doing things his own way, making decisions alone, and yet her presence made him reconsider his approach. He realized that he needed someone not just to help but to share life with. After a short break under the shade of a large oak tree, Elias spoke again. "You've done well today," he said, his tone softer than before. "You handle yourself better than I expected. I see that you are capable, honest, and strong, but strength alone is not enough. There is more to this ranch than work. There is respect, patience, and understanding. If you truly want to stay, you must understand that." Ahuli looked at him steadily. "I understand, sir. I will do my best to learn everything, not just for the work, but to live in a place like this. I want to help, but I also want to be treated fairly. I will not give up my values or my family responsibilities, but I am willing to work honestly and with care." Elias nodded. He could see that she was sincere. "Good," he said. "I will give you tasks that will test you, not to make you fail, but to see if you can handle the life here. You are not just learning to work the land, you are learning to be part of it. The afternoon brought new challenges. Elias took Ahuli to a remote pasture where the cattle had wandered into a patch of thorny bushes. Carefully, they worked together to guide the animals out without harming them.
Ahuli learned quickly how to move the herd calmly, speaking softly and using gentle movements to guide the cattle.
Elias was impressed by her patience and quick thinking, realizing that she had more skill than he had anticipated. As they worked side by side, a slow understanding began to grow between them. Elias shared small stories of his past, explaining how he had built the ranch alone after losing his family long ago. Ahuli listened, not interrupting, letting him speak freely. She recognized a loneliness in him that mirrored her own, a longing for connection that she had not expected to find in such an isolated place. By late afternoon, the sun had begun its descent, casting long shadows across the prairie. The temperature had risen, and both of them were tired from the hard work. Yet neither wanted to stop entirely. There was a rhythm to the work, a quiet satisfaction in completing each task. They had learned to rely on each other, to anticipate movements and decisions, and to trust in each other's abilities. Elias finally spoke, his voice low and thoughtful. "The sun will be setting soon," he said. "We've worked together all day, and I can see that you are capable and strong. But there is still the matter of my offer. You must decide, soon, whether you will accept it. I do not want to pressure you, but I need honesty. This is not just about work. It is about life here, and about sharing it." Ahuli felt the weight of his words. She had worked hard, proved herself, and yet the question of marriage still loomed like a shadow over everything. She did not fear him, but she understood the seriousness of the choice. This was not just a matter of staying on the ranch. It was a decision that would affect her entire life and the lives of her family. She paused, looking out over the fields, the animals grazing quietly, and the soft golden light of the sun falling across the land. She felt a mixture of fear, curiosity, and hope. She could see the man before her, strong, lonely, and honest in his way, and she could see herself learning, growing, and contributing to this place. But she also knew that accepting his offer would not be a simple decision. It would be a step into the unknown. Finally, she turned to him, her voice steady and calm. "I will continue to work today and prove myself," she said. "At sunset, I will make my decision. I will not promise lightly, but I will be honest. I need to know that I can respect you, that you will respect me, and that this choice will be fair to both of us." Elias nodded slowly, a small smile touching his lips. "That is all I ask," he said. "We will work together until sunset, and then we will see what the future holds. For now, focus on the tasks. The land, the animals, and our work will show us what kind of life we might have together." As the hours passed, Ahuli and Elias continued their work with quiet determination. They repaired fences, fed the animals, and prepared for the evening chores. With each task, the trust between them grew, subtle but undeniable. Ahuli learned the rhythm of the ranch, the flow of life in this remote place, and the careful balance needed to manage it all. Elias observed, guided, and occasionally helped, appreciating her skill, resilience, and honesty. By the time the sun began his final descent, painting the sky in brilliant shades of gold and crimson, both of them felt a quiet sense of connection. The day had tested them, challenged them, and brought them together in ways neither had anticipated. The ranch, the work, and the unspoken understanding between them had created a bond built on respect, effort, and shared experience. As the light faded, Elias looked at Ahuli and knew that the moment of decision had arrived. The day had shown him her strength, her intelligence, and her character. He also knew that the choice she would make would shape not only her future, but the future of the ranch, and perhaps even his own lonely heart. And so, as the prairie glowed with the final light of day, both of them faced the question that would define the next chapter of their lives. The offer had been made. The work had been proven, and the decision of whether to accept it hung quietly between them, waiting for the sunset to bring clarity. The sun had dipped lower in the sky, casting long golden shadows across the ranch. The air was warm, filled with the scent of dry grass and the soft sounds of animals settling for the evening. Ahuli paused for a moment, wiping sweat from her brow, and looked over the fields. She could feel the weight of the day pressing on her, yet there was a strange satisfaction in the hard work she had done. She had repaired fences, tended the horses, and learned the rhythm of the ranch as best she could. Elias watched her from the barn steps, arms crossed, his face calm but thoughtful. He had seen many workers in his years, but few had impressed him as much as Ahuli. She was strong, yes, but more than that, she had intelligence, patience, and determination. She did not complain. She did not falter, and she seemed to understand the land in a way that went beyond mere labor. "Good work today," he said finally, his voice carrying across the yard. Ahuli turned to face him, her eyes meeting his with a mix of caution and quiet pride. "Thank you, sir," she replied.
I am learning. There is much more to know, but I will do my best.
"I can see that," he said. "But learning is only part of it. The ranch requires more than skill. It requires understanding, patience, and respect. You've shown me that you are capable, but there is another test. Not of work, but of trust." Ahuli's heart quickened. She had expected the day to end with the chores, yet here he was, speaking of trust and testing. She straightened her back and met his gaze, willing herself to be calm. "I am ready," she said. "I will do what is asked, as long as it is fair and honest." Elias considered her words carefully. He had been alone for many years, and he knew the truth of his own loneliness. He also knew that life on the ranch could be harsh and unpredictable. Sometimes survival depended on working together, on understanding one another without words. He took a deep breath. "There is a small creek at the edge of the property," he said. "A young horse fell in yesterday and injured its leg. It is frightened and unsteady. I want you to help me guide it back to the barn. We must be careful. One wrong move and it could hurt itself or us." Ahuli nodded without hesitation. She had grown up around animals, learning how to treat them gently but firmly, how to earn their trust. She followed Elias to the creek, her eyes alert, her movements deliberate. The horse stood on the muddy bank, its coat streaked with dirt and water, ears flat in fear. It trembled slightly, unsure of what would happen next. "Speak softly," Elias instructed. "Move slowly. Let it know we mean no harm." Ahuli stepped closer, her hand steady as she reached for the horse. She murmured quiet, soothing words, letting her calm energy flow toward the animal. The horse shook at first, but slowly its breathing steadied. Elias moved beside her, guiding the horse gently, his hand near but not forcing it. Together, they led it toward the barn. As they worked, something subtle shifted between them. The tension from earlier in the day softened into a quiet understanding. Elias began to see Ahuli not as a stranger but as someone who could be trusted in moments of challenge. She had courage, but she also had a gentle patience that he realized he lacked. He found himself admiring her more with every careful step she took, every soft word she spoke to the frightened horse. When the animal finally stood safely in the barn, Elias exhaled a small smile touching his lips. "You handled that well," he said. "Better than I expected. You have patience and skill. You can see what needs to be done without being told every step. That is rare." "Ah." Uli smiled faintly, brushing the dust from her hands. "It was not just me," she said. "We worked together. You guided me when I needed it, and I listened. That is how work is done." Together, with respect, Elias nodded, impressed not only by her skill but also by her wisdom. He realized that she had a perspective shaped by her life experiences, by her family, and by her connection to the land. She understood balance between work and rest, strength and gentleness, independence and cooperation. He had seen many people in his life, but few with such insight. After they secured the horse, Elias suggested a short walk to the fields before evening chores. They moved together across the prairie, the golden light bathing the land in warmth. Ahuli noticed the small details, the pattern of the grasses, the soft ripple of the creek, the way the wind carried scents from miles away. She felt connected to the land in a way she had not expected, and she felt a small thrill at having survived the day's work while earning Elias's cautious respect. "Do you always work alone out here?" she asked, curious about the solitary man beside her. Elias's gaze turned distant, and he paused for a moment. "Most of the time, yes," he admitted. "I like to manage my land carefully. It is easier to do things alone. But it is also lonely. I have friends and family in town, but they do not understand the work the way I do. I have built this place with my own hands. That is why I asked you to stay, but not just for work."
I need someone I can trust, someone who will understand, and someone who can be more than just a worker.
She had expected a harsh man, someone strict and unfeeling. Instead, she saw vulnerability beneath his strength, a man who had carried loneliness and responsibility for years. She realized that his sudden marriage proposal was not only about companionship but also about trust, about finding someone who could truly share his life. The sun lowered further, painting the horizon in shades of orange and red. The moment felt heavy, filled with the weight of choices and possibilities. Ahuli felt a mixture of fear and curiosity. She had faced many challenges in her life, but this was different. It was not just about work or survival. It was about a connection she had not anticipated, a bond forming through shared effort and understanding. Elias turned to her, his expression earnest. "The sun will set soon," he said softly. "I do not ask this lightly. If you agree to stay to share this life, it will not be easy. There will be hard days, unexpected challenges, and sacrifices, but I promise you honesty and respect. I am offering more than work. I am offering a life together. You do not have to decide now, but you must think carefully. The choice is yours." Ahuli nodded slowly, absorbing his words. Ahuli. She thought of her family, of the life she wanted to provide for them, and of the future she could have on this land. She also thought of Elias, his strength, his honesty, and the quiet respect he had shown her throughout the day. There was something compelling about him, something that went beyond words, a sense of stability, trust, and a willingness to share his world. She spoke finally, her voice calm and steady. "I will think carefully," she said. "I cannot promise lightly, but I will be honest with you. Today has shown me that this place, this work, and this man are worth consideration. I see that respect, trust, and understanding are possible here. That is rare, and I will not forget it." Elias nodded, relief and hope flickering across his face. "That is all I ask," he said. "We will finish today's work, and then the evening will come. Whatever decision you make, it must be yours." "I will respect that." As the sun began to sink below the horizon, casting long, warm rays across the prairie, they returned to the ranch. The animals were settled, the fences were repaired, and the barn was secure. Yet neither of them could ignore the quiet anticipation that hung in the air. Both had spent the day working side by side, testing boundaries, learning, and building an understanding that neither had expected. Ahuli felt a sense of pride and accomplishment. She had proven her skill, her patience, and her determination. She had earned a measure of respect from Elias, and she had begun to understand the man beneath the rough exterior. For the first time in weeks, she felt a spark of hope, not just for herself, but for the possibility of belonging somewhere, of being part of a life built on trust and shared effort. Elias, meanwhile, felt a cautious excitement. He had spent years alone, managing the ranch, surviving the hardships of life on his own. But today had shown him that partnership was possible. He had seen courage, intelligence, and integrity in Ahuli, and he felt the beginnings of something he had thought impossible, a connection, a shared understanding, and perhaps even companionship. As the final rays of sunlight disappeared, the sky turning soft shades of pink and purple, Both of them paused and looked at each other. There was an unspoken acknowledgment of the day's work, the trust that had grown, and the weight of the choice that still remained. The moment was quiet, filled with potential, and yet heavy with responsibility. The ranch stood silent around them, the fields golden in the fading light, the animals calm, and the wind carrying a gentle promise of evening. Both Ahuli and Elias understood that the day had changed something between them. They had faced challenges, tested boundaries, and learned to rely on each other. And now, as the night approached, the time for decision drew nearer. For the first time, Ahuli felt that the choice she would make could shape not just her life, but the life of another, a life she had come to respect and perhaps even care for. Elias, too, realized that the decision would define not just the future of his ranch, but the possibility of sharing his life, of opening his heart after so many years alone. And so, with the first stars beginning to appear in the evening sky, both of them prepared for the next step. The day had brought understanding, trust, and connection. The evening would bring choice, and with it, the promise of something neither had expected, yet both had quietly hoped for. The sky was now painted in deep oranges and soft purples as the sun drew closer to the horizon. The ranch lay quiet, bathed in the warm glow of evening. Birds sang their final songs of the day, and the breeze carried the soft scent of hay and wildflowers. Ahuli paused for a moment, wiping sweat from her brow, and looked across the fields. Her heart felt heavy with the weight of the decision she would soon have to make. The day had tested her strength, patience, and skill, and she had worked alongside Elias as if they had known each other for years. Yet now, the offer, the marriage he had asked of her, loomed closer with each passing moment. Elias watched her from a short distance, leaning against the fence, his face calm but thoughtful. He had seen her grow over the course of the day, watched her prove herself, and learned her character through work and quiet conversation. She had impressed him with her patience, intelligence, and courage. Yet he knew that his unusual request was still a lot for her to consider. He respected her, but he also felt the tension of the day, the pressure of the moment, and the quiet fear that she might refuse him entirely. "Ahuli," he said softly, breaking the silence, "there is something I need to show you before you make your decision. Come with me." Curious and careful, Ahuli followed him across the fields to a small rocky area near the edge of the property. There, she saw a young calf trapped in a narrow crevice, its small legs tangled in the rocks. The animal trembled in fear, bleating softly, its eyes wide with panic. Ahuli's heart ached for the creature, and she instinctively stepped closer. "We need to help it," Elias said. "But we must be careful. One wrong move and it could injure itself or us. I want you to guide it gently while I clear the rocks." Ahuli nodded. She had faced difficult tasks before, but this one required teamwork, patience, and trust. He approached the calf slowly, speaking soft words of reassurance. The animal shook at first, but gradually it seemed to understand that no harm would come. Elias worked methodically to remove the rocks, occasionally glancing at her to ensure that she was guiding the calf safely. As they worked together, a strange sense of unity formed between them. The task required focus, courage, and trust. Neither could act alone. Each movement had to be coordinated with the other. Ahuli realized that this was more than just a test of skill. It was a test of partnership. She felt her confidence grow as she guided the calf carefully, her hands gentle but firm, her voice calm and soothing. Elias, meanwhile, watched her closely, noticing the patience and care she exhibited. He saw her courage, her intelligence, and her quiet determination. He also saw her respect for the animals, for the land, and for him. It was clear that she was not only capable of surviving on the ranch, but also of understanding the deeper meaning of life there, the balance between strength and gentleness, independence and cooperation. After several tense minutes, they managed to free the calf from the rocks. It stumbled for a moment, then found its footing and ran toward the barn, following the other animals. Both Ahuli and Elias breathed deeply, the relief of success washing over them. For a moment, neither spoke. They simply watched the young animal run free, feeling the quiet satisfaction of a difficult task accomplished together. "You did well," Elias said finally, his voice calm but filled with admiration. "I could not have done it without you. You have patience, courage, and intelligence. You have proven yourself today not just with work, but with trust. You can handle the challenges of this ranch, and perhaps more than that, you can handle life here with me." Ahuli looked at him, her heart racing. She had expected a day of labor, a test of her skills, but not this, a shared challenge that demanded courage, trust, and cooperation. She realized that through this experience she had begun to see Elias in a new light. He was not just a solitary rancher, but a man capable of respect, patience, and honesty. "I did what I could," she said quietly. "But we did it together. You guided me when I needed it, and I followed. That is how work and life should be done together with trust." "Exactly," he said. "That is why I asked you to stay. Not just for work, but for partnership. Life out here is not easy. It is harsh and unpredictable. But if we can trust each other, understand each other, and work together, we can face anything. That is what I am asking of you." Ahuli felt a mixture of emotions swirling within her: fear, hope, admiration, and curiosity. She had spent the day learning, working, and proving herself. She had faced challenges she had not anticipated and had emerged stronger and more confident. Yet the question of the proposal still hung over her, heavier now after the shared trial with the calf. She knew that the decision she made would not only affect her life but also the life of Elias and the future of the ranch. The wind stirred the tall grass around them, carrying the faint sounds of the evening, chirping insects, the distant lowing of cattle, and the soft murmur of the creek. The world seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the choice to be made. Ahuli took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of the sun as it dipped lower in the sky. She thought of her family, of the sacrifices they had made, and of the possibility of a life where she could provide for them while also finding a sense of belonging for herself. Elias broke the silence. "Ahuli, I know this is not easy," he said. "I understand if you need time, but the sun is setting and we cannot delay forever. Whatever choice you make, I will respect it. But I hope you see what I see: strength, courage, honesty, and partnership. That is rare. That is why I asked you to stay." Ahuli looked at him, her eyes steady. She could see the truth in his words, the sincerity in his expression. She realized that he was not demanding obedience, nor was he trying to control her. He was asking for partnership, for someone to share life with, for someone who could understand and respect him as he had begun to understand and respect her.
"I see it," she said softly.
"I see your honesty, your strength, and the care you show for this land and the animals. I see your loneliness, but also your willingness to share. I respect you, and I feel that you respect me. That is not something I take lightly." Elias's heart beat faster. He had hoped for understanding, but her words carried a weight and depth that surprised him. He stepped closer, his expression earnest. "Ahuli, I do not ask for a promise because I want control," he said. "I ask because I want trust, partnership, and honesty. I want someone who will share this life, who will work with me, who will face challenges with courage and patience. That is all I ask." Ahuli felt a warmth spread through her chest. She had faced many challenges in her life, but this day had shown her something she had not expected: connection, trust, and the possibility of shared life. She realized that her choice was not only about work or survival, but about belonging, respect, and understanding. The last rays of the sun touched the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange, pink, and purple. The world seemed to pause, holding its breath, as if aware of the significance of this moment. Ahuli and Elias stood together, the quiet prairie around them, and both knew that the time for decision had arrived. "I will stay," Ahuli said finally, her voice calm but filled with conviction. "Not because it is easy or because I am forced, but because I see what we can build together. I see respect, trust, and partnership. I am willing to share this life with you, if you are willing to share it with me." Elias's eyes softened, and a small, genuine smile touched his face. "That is all I could hope for," he said. "Not a promise made lightly, but an honest choice. We will face the challenges together, and we will respect and trust each other. That is the beginning of a life worth living." Ahuli smiled in return, feeling a quiet joy she had not felt in many weeks. The day had tested her in ways she had not anticipated, and she had proven her strength, patience, and courage. But more than that, she had found a connection, a bond built on trust and respect, that promised something new and meaningful. As the sun disappeared completely behind the horizon, the ranch was bathed in soft twilight. The animals were calm, the fences secure, and the barn ready for the evening. Ahuli and Elias stood together side by side, feeling the quiet satisfaction of a day well spent and the promise of a shared life ahead. The prairie, the land, and the quiet evening witnessed a moment of understanding, trust, and choice. Two lives, brought together by circumstance and hard work, had begun a journey of partnership, respect, and hope. And as the first stars appeared in the sky, both Ahuli and Elias knew that this day would be remembered, not only for the challenges faced, but for the bond formed in the light of trust and courage. The prairie was calm under the soft glow of twilight. The sky had faded from gold to deep blue, sprinkled with the first stars of the evening. A gentle breeze moved through the fields, carrying the scents of wild grass and fresh earth. The ranch, now quiet after a long day of work, stood solid and enduring in the fading light. For Ahuli and Elias, this was not just the end of a day, it was the beginning of something new. Ahuli sat on the porch steps, her hands folded in her lap. The events of the day kept running through her mind. She remembered the early morning, when she had first arrived at the ranch, nervous and unsure. She remembered the long hours of work, the testing of her skills, and the trials with the animals. Most of all, she remembered the moments when she and Elias had worked side by side, learning from each other, guiding each other, and growing together. Elias joined her quietly, sitting on the step beside her. Neither spoke at first. The silence was comfortable, filled with the soft sounds of the evening, crickets chirping, a distant owl calling, and the gentle rustle of the wind through the grass. Finally, Elias broke the silence. "You have done well today," he said softly, "not just with the work, but with everything else. You've shown patience, courage, and understanding. More than that, you've shown trust. That is the most important thing here." "I have learned much today," she said. "I have learned about the land, the animals, and about life here. But I have also learned about you, and that is not easy to understand in just one day. You are strong, honest, and proud. But you are also fair and patient, and that is rare. I respect that." Elias's eyes softened. He had spent years alone, accustomed to silence and the rhythms of his ranch. But today had been different. Today had brought him someone who could understand, challenge, and share life with him. Someone he could trust, someone who could stand beside him in every sense. "Ahuli," he said, his voice low but earnest, "I do not know what the future holds. Life here is never easy, and the land will always test us. But I do know that I want you to be part of that future, not just as a worker, but as someone I can trust, someone I can rely on, and someone I can share this life with. Will you stay, not because I ask, but because you want to?"
Ahuli considered his words carefully.
She thought of her family and how the work here could provide for them. She thought of herself and the possibility of belonging somewhere, of being valued not just for her labor, but for her character and her presence. She thought of Elias and the respect he had shown her throughout the day and the trust he had placed in her. "I will stay," she said finally, her voice calm and confident. "I will stay because I see what is possible here. I see respect, honesty, and partnership. I see a life where I can contribute, be valued, and also grow. I choose this not because I am forced, but because I want to be part of it." Elias felt a warmth in his chest he had not felt in years. He nodded slowly, a quiet smile on his face. That is all I could hope for, he said. Not a promise made lightly, but a choice made honestly. We will face the challenges together, and we will respect and trust each other. That is the start of something real, something worth living for. The stars began to appear one by one in the darkening sky. The ranch was peaceful now, and the air carried a sense of calm and promise. Ahuli and Elias stood together, side by side, looking out over the fields. The long hours of the day had tested them, but they had proven their ability to work together, to trust, and to understand each other. As they returned to the house, Elias led Ahuli to the small garden behind the ranch. It was modest but well kept, with rows of vegetables and herbs. "This is where I grow much of our food," he said. "It is hard work, but it is worth it. Perhaps you can help me with it from time to time." Ahuli smiled, feeling a sense of connection to this place and to the life it represented.
I would like that, she said.
"It reminds me of home, and it feels good to nurture something that will provide for others." They worked together quietly in the garden for a little while, planting, watering, and tending the soil. The movements were gentle and deliberate, each action performed with care. In these quiet moments, Ahuli began to feel a deeper sense of belonging. She was not just working, she was creating, contributing, and becoming part of a life that was bigger than herself. As the evening deepened, Elias lit a small lantern inside the house. They shared a simple meal, bread, vegetables, and a little cheese, and spoke quietly of the day. They laughed softly at small mistakes and mishaps, and they shared stories of their pasts, learning more about each other. Ahuli discovered that Elias had once traveled to distant towns and learned skills that had helped him build the ranch. Elias learned about Ahuli's family, her childhood, and the traditions she held dear. Through conversation, work, and shared moments, a quiet bond had formed between them. It was not built on words alone, but on respect, trust, and shared effort. They had faced challenges together, and through those challenges they had discovered something rare: partnership, in its truest form. After the meal, they stepped outside once more. The night was calm, with a clear sky full of stars. The air was cool, carrying the scent of grass and soil. Ahuli looked at the fields, at the barn, and at the land that stretched endlessly before them. For the first time in many weeks, she felt a sense of peace. She felt connected to this place, to the work, and to Elias. "I am glad I came here today," she said softly. "I did not know what to expect, but I see now that this place, this ranch, and this life can be something meaningful. I feel at home here." Elias nodded, his gaze on the horizon. "And I am glad you came," he replied. "You have brought more than your strength and skill. You have brought understanding, courage, and trust. This place is better because of you, and I hope we can continue to build something together." For a long moment they stood side by side, the quiet of the prairie surrounding them. The stars above seemed to shine brighter, reflecting the hope and promise that had grown between them. The day's trials had tested them, and they had risen to meet every challenge. They had worked together, learned from each other, and discovered a shared sense of purpose. Ahuli realized that her choice had been more than a decision about staying or leaving. It had been a choice about trust, respect, and partnership. She had chosen not just to stay on the ranch, but to be part of a life built on honesty, courage, and shared responsibility. Elias realized that he had found more than a capable worker. He had found someone who could share his life, who could understand and respect him, and who could face the challenges of the ranch and life with strength and determination. He felt a quiet joy and relief, knowing that he would not be alone in facing the future. As the night deepened, they returned to the porch, where they sat quietly, listening to the sounds of the prairie. The animals were calm, the ranch secure, and the air filled with a sense of peace and possibility. Ahuli felt a warmth in her chest, a feeling of safety, trust, and connection that she had not known in weeks. Elias felt a similar warmth, a quiet happiness at having found someone who could share not just the work, but the life, the hopes, and the future. They spoke little, but words were not needed. The day had shown them each other's strength, courage, and character. The trust they had built was deeper than words could express. The shared experience of work, challenge, and understanding had created a bond that neither could deny. Eventually, they rose and went inside. Elias showed Ahuli to a small, simple room prepared for her. It was modest but comfortable, with a window overlooking the fields and a warm bed. She looked around, feeling a sense of gratitude and belonging. For the first time in weeks, she felt that she had a place where she was valued, respected, and understood. As she prepared for bed, she thought about the day, about Elias, and about the ranch. She realized that life would still be challenging, but she no longer felt alone. She had found someone who could stand beside her, someone she could trust, and someone who respected her as she was. Elias, outside the room, paused for a moment, looking out over the fields. He thought about the day, about Ahuli, and about the life they could build together. He felt a quiet sense of hope, a feeling he had not experienced in many years. He knew that the work would continue. The land would demand effort, and challenges would arise. But he also knew that he would not face them alone. As night fully fell, the stars twinkling overhead, both Ahuli and Elias rested with a sense of peace and anticipation. They had faced the day's trials, proven their strength and character, and made a choice that would shape the rest of their lives. The prairie, the ranch, and the quiet night held the promise of a future built on trust, respect, and partnership. Tomorrow would bring more work, challenges, and growth. But tonight, they had found something rare and precious: connection, understanding, and hope. And in that moment, under the wide, starlit sky, both of them knew that they were ready to face the future together, hand in hand, building a life grounded in trust, courage, and shared effort.